Welcome back to GBGuns. We are back from the range with the Smith and Wesson M&P 2.0 in 45, and got the 9mm here because some of you asked for a recoil comparison, doing some slow motion to show the difference in recoil characteristics between the two, and we did that. That's included. Also saw a lot of comments. People were disappointed about the capacity of the 45, saying, hey, well, if the gun is slightly taller than the 9mm, it only has 10 rounds. How is that possible if the 9 has 15? Well, that's kind of easy to answer, and that's simply they wanted to keep the magazines about the same width. See there? Even though 45 is a much broader line, that means that the stacking is slightly more vertical than you may be accustomed to in some of your high capacity double stack 45s. And with those rounds not being so level with one another in their stacking, of course it's got to be taller, and so the magazines have a significant difference in height. You can see there how much taller the 45 is than the 9mm. That's what helps keep the grip and feel similar between the 45 and the 9, even though the 45 cartridge is much larger. So hopefully that answers that question for you as to why you have a slightly longer grip on the 45 than the 9mm. With that said, I'm going to get to cleaning this guy up and roll the footage in for you so you can take a look and see how this gun did. We've got a what's for dinner test, though not as extensive as our normal. And that's because, look at me trying to do that one-handed. It's not going to work. There's really not as much variety out there of 45 rounds as there are 9mm rounds. So that's a bit of a shorter test, but you'll see Maddie's hands and how her smaller hands, which are smaller than my hands of course, work on the different back straps there. You saw how they fit my large hands as far as trigger reach, etc. in the tabletop video. Anyways, I'm going to stop yakking, start cleaning, and let you guys have the fun of watching the range time. Start things off with our full mag +1 on the Smith and Wesson compact M&P 45 2.0. We've got 2 mags here that come with the gun. We'll put our 1 in, drop that out, throw in our 10. It's a snug fit to get 11 rounds in there. And there is a piece of steel out at 50 yards. It's a reduced size torso. I don't know if we're going to hit it, but it's something to aim at. Let's just see, most importantly, does the gun run with a full mag +1? Just lost the steel, and it ran.
I'm going to show you a little bit about how the different interchangeable back straps affect the positioning of my hand, which is a little bit smaller. Starting with the large that we have here, and they say right on the inside what size they are. This one, a little bit harder for me to even slide on there. You see, this one obviously makes it noticeably wider, which things are still reachable for me. I can still get my thumb up to the controls. I can still get my finger to the ideal spot there on the trigger, but it's not exactly comfortable or ideal for me. So I'm going to want to slide this guy.
Having a shallow reach on the trigger like what Maddie just showed will cause you to hit left, believe it or not, because that shorter reach, when you pull the trigger, you're actually going to be also pushing the gun a little bit to the left.
Now you can see the medium large, not quite as wide, but still a little bit heftier there. Still able to get my finger to the trigger and my thumb to the controls, but again, it's not a comfortable reach. But thankfully, it is pretty easy to just snap this guy right back up, or at least the last one was.
You start at the bottom and kind of pinch out.
Do you? Well, so this one's not my friend. Oh, there we go. Now these guys are a little bit different. They don't have a little tail there. There we go. So now we're starting to get just a little bit more in my size and my shape. But it's still just a little bit wider. So what I want is going to be this little guy right here. It says small on the inside. You just snap this little guy right in there. Fits on like a glove. See, he's pretty thin. Thumb, controls, easy. Trigger, control, easy. That's a good fit for me.
What's for dinner for the 45 is a little bit lighter just because, you know, there's really not that much variety out there in 45, at least not that I've got my hands on yet. You can see the bullet weights here and look at the profile. Going to be 3 shots of each, as always. The first round to see if it'll pick up and feed off of slide lock. Then is it enough energy to cycle and pick up the next one? And the third round is the bonus. We'll see how the Smith and Wesson 2.0 compact fares.
All right, to start off the what's for dinner, we have the Winchester PDX-1 Defender, 230 grain, 5 shots. We're going to see how that, 3 shots, so we are going to see how that runs. Oh, smoky. We have the Golden Saber High Performance Jacket, 185 grain hollow point. All right, next we have Legend Pro Copper Hollow Point, a 185 grain. Elite Performance ammunition from Sig Sauer, which is a 185 grain. That one was snappy. So now we have Federal Premium ammunition. This one promises to be low recoil, 165 grain, so we'll see if they keep their promise. A little bit lower.
It looked like less gun movement.
A little lower. All right, so my impressions of this gun are it's a little rough. So I don't have as much experience shooting 45 just in general. So whenever I do shoot 45, it's kind of few and far between that I'm always just super rusty at it. I'm always just not really expecting as much weight, as much recoil. Pretty much every aspect that you can imagine from 45, it just comes as a shock to me all over again. So with that being said, every single round was a little bit rough. The gun itself, for a 45, it's not super heavy. The recoil for a 45 was not as bad as I've experienced in some other 45 caliber pistols. It has a good trigger pull. Relatively smooth. The controls are easy for me to get to, especially since I swapped out for the small back plate. It has good texture, good gripping. The sight is, it's a little white dot sight. It's generally easy to see. Not my favorite in this kind of lighting that we have here in October, but still easy to see on target. And it didn't have a problem filtering through any of the ammunition that we tried with it, so pretty reliable gun.
So as we've come to expect from a Smith & Wesson, the gun ran without any hiccups. It was 100% reliable and ate what we fed it. So as far as that, no concerns. This finish sure makes for an easy clean. We don't put a ton of rounds through the guns in the shooting impressions test because it's a shooting impressions. It's not a torture test. Quite frankly, I don't think torture tests, although they're entertaining, really serve a lot of value to most of us civilians because, well, when's the last time you put 5,000 rounds through a gun straight through? You know, most of us are lucky to shoot 1,000 rounds a year out of a carry gun or whatnot, and we have so many guns to get through that we give you the impressions, what you can expect if you were able to rent one of these or borrow one for a day, if you're in a state that allows that. As far as wear, of course, we got some brass mark here that's completely normal. Same thing on the breech face there, that's absolutely normal. A little bit of deterioration in the polish here that might come off with some more effort. And then we've got a little bit of finish wear on the barrel. The lighting will show you there's a line there and a little bit on the hood here. That's pretty typical, nothing I'm concerned about. The gun ran great, was very comfortable. I hope the recoil comparison helps. For those of you that were wondering how, well, I mean, polymer 45s have been around for a while, but if you're curious about the difference between 9 and 45, for both Maddie and I, 9mm was a lot easier to get, and I always end up doing these awkward reconstructions when I'm working with the tripod and camera here. But for both Maddie and I, 9mm was, of course, a quicker follow-up than the 45. Not to say that the 45 was unbearable. I carried a 45 for the first couple years that I was carrying. That was my preferred caliber. And at the time, I, like many others who were 45 fans, preferred the push of 45 versus the snap of 9mm, if that makes sense. 45 recoil seems to kind of come back at you more, and 9mm seems to flip in your hand a little more, generally, depending on the system. But this is a very well-built gun. Had no issues with it, and for those of you that like to make large holes, I think it's a great option. Thanks for watching.
Yep. All right, next I have the golden high performance jacket.